My parents lied about my inheritance and gave it to my sister, so I hired a lawyer and took back everything they thought I'd never claim. I'm a 28-year-old guy, and I've always felt like a background character in my own family. From the outside, we looked like the perfect suburban household. Dad in finance, Mom on the PTA, and Emily, my younger sister. The sweet golden girl everyone adored. Smiling family photos, matching sweaters at Christmas, staged dinners where everyone laughed just a little too loudly. But behind that curated image, I was invisible, not hated, not abused, just ignored in the most soul-erasing way. When Emily got a B+ on a math quiz, she was showered with praise. When I aced an AP exam, my dad glanced up from his phone and said, "Well, that's expected, isn't it?" I wasn't allowed to fail, but I wasn't allowed to shine either. I lived in this tightrope space where the best thing I could do was not disrupt the image they worked so hard to maintain. Remember being 10 years old and finding out we were going on a family vacation to Disney World, except I wasn't invited. "You had school," my mom said flatly, as if missing 4th grade spelling was a valid reason. They brought Emily, took hundreds of pictures, framed them. I wasn't in a single one. I came home to a Mickey Mouse keychain like it was supposed to make me feel included. By the time I was in high school, I'd stopped sharing my wins. College acceptances, art competitions, internships. I told my friends instead. At home, it just didn't matter. I'd come home to find my room cleared out for house guests, my posters torn down, and my bed used as storage. Mom once said, "Don't take it personally. It's just a space." But it was my space. They never yelled, never hit. But they made me feel like a guest in my own life, and I didn't realize how deep that wound was until the day Grandpa died and everything fell apart. When I turned 18, the favoritism that used to sting emotionally started cutting in ways that actually hurt my future. Emily had just graduated high school, and my parents proudly announced they'd be paying her full tuition at a private university, dorms, books, a new laptop, the whole package. When I asked about help for my own college plans, Dad sighed like I'd just asked for a sports car. He said, "You're a boy. You'll figure it out. It'll build character." That line stuck with me. Build character. What it really meant was, you're on your own. I ended up enrolling in community college while juggling a part-time job stocking shelves at a grocery store. My parents called it learning responsibility. Emily, meanwhile, was posting pictures from dorm parties and ski trips on Instagram, captions about living her best life, funded by the people who barely texted me back. When I tried to bring it up, Mom would say, "You know how sensitive your sister is. Don't make her feel guilty." It was like every conversation somehow turned into my fault. When I worked double shifts to afford rent, they called me dramatic. When I stopped visiting for holidays, they said I was distant. One Christmas, I came home after saving for months to buy them thoughtful gifts, a leather wallet for Dad, a bracelet for Mom. They smiled politely, then handed me a $20 gift card to a gas station. Emily got a designer handbag. Dad laughed, saying, "You don't even wear nice things anyway." It wasn't about the money. It was about how obvious it had become that I didn't belong in my own family's circle of care. But I told myself it was fine, that I'd make my own way, earn everything I got, and prove I didn't need their help. What I didn't know was that money, their money, would one day become the weapon they used to betray me completely. My grandfather, Leonard, was the one person who ever made me feel seen. He ran a small chain of repair shops, honest work, long hours, and a reputation everyone in town respected. He'd take me along sometimes, letting me sweep the floors or hold tools while he explained how machines were like people. Treat them with patience, and they'll tell you what's wrong. Those were the few times I felt like I belonged to something bigger than myself. When I was 20, Grandpa's health started declining. I began visiting every weekend to help with grocery runs, fix things around the house, and keep him company. Emily almost never showed up. Mom always said she was busy or too emotional to see him sick. I remember once sitting by his bed and he said in a raspy voice, "You've got my spirit, kid. When I'm gone, everything I've built, make sure it stays in good hands." It wasn't a grand statement. It felt like an old man's wish for continuity, but I took it seriously. Grandpa had this quiet dignity, and he always hinted that he wanted me to carry the torch. My parents knew it too. They'd roll their eyes when I talked about learning the business. "That's a lot of responsibility," Dad would say. "Leave the money stuff to us." When Grandpa was moved into hospice, I noticed they started showing up more often. Not to help, but to handle paperwork. Mom said it was about insurance. Dad claimed Grandpa wanted to simplify things. I didn't question it. I was just trying to hold on to the last bit of time we had left. But the night before he passed, Grandpa squeezed my hand and whispered, "Don't let them twist things." At the time, I didn't understand what he meant. Later, I would. And that sentence would haunt me every day after the funeral. Grandpa's funeral was held on a gray, windless morning, the kind where the world feels like it's holding its breath. The church was packed, every pew filled with neighbors and old employees who'd known him for decades. I sat near the front, clutching the folded eulogy I'd written. It wasn't long, just something to say thank you, to honor the man who'd been more of a father to me than my actual one ever was. But when the service started, my mother took the podium. She hadn't told me she was speaking. Then Dad followed, reading something off his phone about family legacy and unity. When I asked quietly if I could read mine afterward, Mom whispered sharply, "We don't have time for everyone." The words burned. I wasn't everyone. I was his grandson. After the burial, people offered condolences, shaking hands, saying how proud Grandpa had been of me. My parents smiled, deflecting each comment like a tennis match. When I mentioned wanting to see the will, Dad chuckled. "There's not much to see. A few savings accounts in the house. Emily's helping us sort it all." That name again. Emily. Always Emily. A week later, when I brought it up again, Mom sighed like I was being difficult. "You don't need to worry about paperwork. It's complicated legal stuff. Besides, you wouldn't understand." The tone was final, dismissive. I should have pushed harder, but part of me didn't want to believe my own parents could be dishonest about something like that. That night, I sat in Grandpa's empty house. The air still smelled like engine oil and peppermint tea. His tools were neatly lined up, his favorite mug still by the sink. And for a moment, I felt this cold, gnawing suspicion that something wasn't right. I didn't know it then, but that was the first time they successfully erased me from something that was rightfully mine, and it wouldn't be the last. A few months after the funeral, Emily showed up to a family barbecue driving a brand new luxury SUV, not used, not leased, new. I stood in the driveway staring at the car like it was some kind of mirage. She stepped out in designer sunglasses, holding an iced latte, talking about how she was manifesting abundance now. Dad clapped her on the back like she'd cured cancer. "She's doing so well for herself," he beamed. I asked, "Did you get a new job?" Emily just laughed. "Not exactly. Just had some things fall into place. I let it go, until 2 weeks later I found out she had put a cash offer on a house. No mortgage, no cosigner, just bought a 3-bedroom Craftsman in a quiet neighborhood like it was nothing. I tried not to jump to conclusions, but things weren't adding up. She'd been working part-time for a startup that laid her off last year. No other job, no savings I knew of, no side hustle. Yet suddenly she was living like a wellness influencer. When I brought it up to Mom, she gave me that sharp tone again. "Your sister is private. Not everything is your business. And Dad, why are you always so suspicious? Can't you be happy for your family?" That line always gets me. Your family. Like it's something I should be grateful to orbit around, even if I'm not allowed to touch the core of it. But the final crack came when I visited Emily's new place. On the kitchen counter was a manila folder labeled Estate Transfer, Leonard B. She quickly shoved it under a stack of magazines, smiling like nothing happened. "Want a tour?" she asked. I smiled back. But inside, my chest burned. That wasn't just a receipt or an old file. That was proof. And I knew then. I had to find out what they were hiding, even if it meant burning every bridge left between us. I couldn't stop thinking about that folder. Estate Transfer, Leonard B. The name alone made my skin crawl. I'd never heard Emily mention any of Grandpa's estate business before. But now, it was sitting in her kitchen, like it was hers. Like she owned it. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind kept circling back to every time they told me not to worry about the will, about how complicated it was. How Emily, of all people, somehow had access to documents I was never even allowed to ask about. So I did something I probably shouldn't have. I texted Emily a few days later saying I left my sunglasses at her house. She told me she'd be out for the afternoon but said I could swing by and grab them. I knew exactly what I was looking for. I walked into that kitchen like I belonged there, opened the drawer where she stuffed the folder, and there it was, right on top. I flipped it open. Inside were property transfer documents, bank account statements, letters from a probate attorney. And then I saw it, a copy of the will. It had a date on it, signed just 3 days before Grandpa died. And next to sole beneficiary, it read, Emily B., no mention of me. No mention of splitting anything, nothing. But what hit me the hardest was the signature. Leonard B., written in shaky, uneven strokes. I had cards from him, notes, even checks. That wasn't his handwriting. I stared at it for a long time. Compared the loops, the slant, the pressure. It wasn't just different. It looked forged. I snapped photos of everything with my phone, my hands trembling the whole time. I knew what this meant. They didn't just lie to me, they erased me. And now I finally had a piece of the puzzle they thought I'd never be smart or bold enough to find. For 2 days, I couldn't eat. Couldn't think. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that forged signature burned into my memory. The way the L curled wrong. The way the pressure dropped halfway through the name. It wasn't Grandpa's writing. It wasn't even close. I started digging, quietly. I wasn't ready to confront anyone yet. I needed more than suspicion. So I pulled out every card, letter, check, and note Grandpa had ever written to me. I laid them side by side with the will copy from Emily's folder. The difference was undeniable. Next, I reached out to a friend from college who had gone into law. I didn't give him full details, just told him I had questions about a possible inheritance dispute. He told me to find a probate lawyer immediately, and more importantly, a handwriting analyst. I didn't even know that was a real job. I spent the next week collecting documents, emailing scanned copies, and gathering public records. I requested property transfers, bank account closures, and tax filings related to the estate. Every time I hit submit on a form or wrote a check to another specialist, I felt this tightness in my chest, like I was breaking some kind of family code. Then one night, my phone buzzed. My lawyer emailed back, "We have enough red flags to move forward." This could be considered fraudulent conveyance. The signature on the will doesn't match verified samples. Also, property transfers to your sister occurred within 48 hours of your grandfather's death. You need to come in. That was the moment it stopped being suspicion. It became evidence, and with that, I realized just how deep their betrayal ran. This wasn't about favoritism anymore. This was a heist, and I was going to take every single thing they stole back. I thought about staying silent until the legal process was fully underway, but something in me needed to say it. I needed them to know I knew. So I drove over to my parents' house on a rainy Sunday afternoon, the kind of day that always made the air feel heavier. Mom opened the door, all fake warmth and small talk. I sat them both down at the kitchen table and said, flat out, "I know about the will. I know about the property transfers. I've seen the documents." For a moment, they just stared at me. Then Dad chuckled, actually chuckled, like I'd just accused them of stealing a cookie. "You're really going to start drama over legal stuff you don't understand?" he said. I pulled up the photos on my phone. "This signature, it's not Grandpa's. I've had it analyzed." Mom's face tightened. Her voice turned sharp. "How dare you accuse us of something like that?" "After everything we've done for you," I nearly laughed. "What have you done for me?" "Ignored me, lied to me. You handed everything to Emily like I didn't exist." Dad slammed his hand on the table. "Emily was there when it mattered. She's the one who helped us with everything after he passed." I snapped back. "I was the one who spent every weekend with him while you two ghosted the hospice." Mom's voice dropped low. "You've always been jealous. You've always been bitter. This is why we couldn't trust you with anything important." That was the moment it hit me. They weren't going to admit anything. Not even a shred of guilt. They were going to spin it, reframe it, gaslight me into believing I was the problem all along. I left without another word. But my decision was made. If they wouldn't give me the truth, I'd take it in court, piece by piece. Filing the lawsuit was like striking a match in a room soaked with gasoline. I knew it would blow up. I just didn't realize how fast. The day the court papers were served, my phone exploded. Missed calls, voicemails, rage-filled texts from my parents, from Emily, from extended family I hadn't spoken to in years, suddenly telling me I was tearing the family apart. Emily left me a voice message screaming, "How could you do this to us? Grandpa would be ashamed of you." No one asked why. No one asked what they did. Just blame, guilt, condemnation. The worst part? Some of it worked. I sat in my apartment alone, eating cold takeout in the dark, wondering if I had gone too far. Maybe I should have let it go. Maybe this fight wasn't worth losing everyone. But then I opened my email. A report from the handwriting expert had come in. The verdict was crystal clear. The signature on the will is inconsistent with verified handwriting samples from Leonard B., likely forged by a third party. That moment split me open. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. They stole from me. They lied to my face. They had forged Grandpa's will and handed his legacy to the one person who never lifted a finger for him. The court process moved faster than I expected. Depositions, bank records, property documents, everything lining up exactly how I feared. I walked into the courthouse alone, dressed in the only suit I owned, and watched my parents sit next to Emily like they were the victims. I had never felt more alone, more angry, more broken. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about every year I spent believing I was less than, every moment they made me feel like I didn't deserve to belong, and now, finally, they were going to face what they buried in front of a judge. Under oath, the courtroom was colder than I expected. Not just the air, but the atmosphere, sterile, clinical, no space for emotions. Just facts. Just law. I sat on one side of the room, my lawyer beside me, a thick file of evidence laid out in front of us. Across from me were my parents and Emily, dressed like they were auditioning for sainthood. Emily didn't look at me once. My mother? Glaring daggers. When the judge asked for opening statements, my lawyer didn't waste time. She laid it out plainly. Forged will, fraudulent transfers, concealed assets. Then she handed the judge our smoking gun, the expert report. I watched the judge flip through it slowly, eyebrows knitting closer with every page. Then we presented the timeline, how the estate documents were changed just days before Grandpa died, how everything moved into Emily's name within 48 hours of the funeral. Their lawyer tried to argue it was Leonard's final wish, and that Emily had a closer bond. But under questioning, Emily slipped. She admitted she never saw Grandpa sign the documents. She said he might have been too weak to hold the pen. The courtroom went silent. The judge asked if Leonard had ever expressed any changes to the will verbally. My father claimed he told us privately it was what he wanted. But we had emails, texts, video footage of Grandpa talking to me just weeks before his death, saying, "It all goes to you. You're the only one I trust with it." When the judge gave his ruling, my heart stopped. The will was invalidated, all properties and accounts frozen. Full control of the estate reverted to me pending formal redistribution. I didn't cry. I didn't cheer. I just sat there in shock as my family stared at me like I was a stranger, like I was the villain. But the truth was out now, and the empire they built on lies had just started to crumble. After the ruling, my phone didn't ring for days. No apologies, no explanations, just silence. The same kind they'd used to erase me for years, only now it worked in reverse. I was the one they didn't know how to face anymore. I stood alone in Grandpa's house the day the keys were officially handed over. The air smelled just like it used to, faint motor oil, dust, and peppermint. His tools were still in place, untouched since the last time I cleaned them. I ran my hand along the wooden workbench and whispered, "I kept my promise." The legal team helped me recover most of the assets, some properties, a few investments, the original shop he'd opened back in the 70s. I didn't sell them. Instead, I restored the house and turned one of the smaller properties into a non-profit workshop for young mechanics. Kids who didn't get second chances at home, like me. Therapy helped too. For the first time in my life, I gave a name to the ache I carried for so long, emotional neglect. I stopped pretending it hadn't affected me. I stopped trying to earn love from people who rationed it like oxygen. Emily reached out once, an email. No subject line, just one sentence. Was it worth destroying the family? I never replied, because I didn't destroy anything. I just stopped letting them get away with pretending everything was fine. People always say revenge is sweet. But this wasn't revenge, it was reclamation of my worth, of my truth, of my name etched back into the legacy they tried to erase. Every time I unlock the workshop doors and hear the hum of machines coming to life, I feel him, Grandpa, still here. Still proud, and for once, I don't feel like a background character anymore. I feel like the man he always knew I'd become. It's strange how life feels. After a storm finally passes, quiet, still, like you're waiting for another crash of thunder that never comes. That's how it felt in the months after everything settled, after the court ruling, after the dust, after the silence. For a while, I kept expecting some grand confrontation, my parents showing up at my door, demanding forgiveness or trying to spin one last story. But nothing came. No one knocked. No one called. I was out of the family group chat, removed from photo albums, blocked on Emily's Instagram like I never existed. And weirdly, I was okay with that. I didn't need their version of love anymore. Instead, I poured myself into the workshop. We opened with 6 students that first summer, teens who reminded me of myself, showing up with heavy eyes and guarded hearts. We didn't just teach them how to fix engines. We taught them how to build confidence, trust, and self-worth. One of them told me, "You treat us like people." And that nearly broke me in the best way. One afternoon, I got an email from my lawyer. Another property had come up under Emily's name, one that had been buried in a separate trust account. Fraudulent, just like the rest. I signed the paperwork to reclaim it, but this time, I donated it to a local housing program for single mothers. Not out of spite, out of choice. Because I finally understood. Taking everything back wasn't just about revenge. It was about control. About choosing who I wanted to be. They lied. They stole. They left me behind. But I survived. I built something better. And I turned their betrayal into my blueprint. So when people ask me if I ever regret dragging it all into court, my answer is always the same. No. They tried to write me out of the story. I just picked up the pen and finished it myself.